Okay, we're back again with Mike Gambino, Gambino Landscape Lighting. This is part three. We are going to discuss the problems that are typically seen today in landscape lighting. Mike briefly started into this on the last topic, so let's start off with that. What are the problems that you're seeing by many providers out there today? And, you mentioned hotspots. Let's start there.
Hotspots. Typically, when you're lighting a light surface, let's say a white or like an off-white, let's take the architecture or even concrete that is like a light colored concrete. The reflective qualities are very high of light colored items. We need to take that into consideration. And that may mean removing the light source and not placing it as close to the subject, tuning down the intensity, the luminosity of the light of the lamp, maybe using using some shield better type of different lenses, spread lenses, frosted lenses, that type of thing.
Screening or some sort of
Right.
softening.
Screen to get that type of softness, or maybe even mean changing the color temperature. I like to use typically like an off-white surface. I'll use like a neutral 3000 Kelvin LED because I think it shows the best. There'll be some occasions where there's like a stark white. We may use a 4000 again if we want to bring attention to that, but we've got to be very, very careful about the intensity because a little bit of light goes a long way in those situations. If you take that same lamp and you shine it on a dark green subject, like let's say a bush or a tree, it takes on a whole different look than it does when it's on a light subject. Typically what I'll see is too bright of illumination on light colored architectural buildings, hot spots on trees, meaning it's too intense because the light source is too close, or the spread of the lens, spread of the bulb, spread of the light source is not appropriate. It's more of a spotty than a flood. Even with steps or walkways, the intensity on those should be toned down. They shouldn't be of upper brightness. You just want enough light to see people to navigate. It's not something you want to draw attention to. It could be very, very, it could take away from the whole scene of your lighting. If you're drawing attention to steps, your eyes are going towards that and not, towards the house itself or towards other beautiful aspects of the, of the scene, then that's a problem.
Sure.
So,
no, that's great. So we got hot spots. What other problems or issues do you see today?
In regards to design?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, because that's what I prefer. I mean,
dark holes.
But you can talk about whether it's installations, their business process. I mean, it doesn't matter. I just
Well,
curious
in regards to
on
design,
what you're seeing.
I would say that the next biggest issue would be dark spots, would be big dark holes. And again, we're not illuminating everything. We're not spreading light evenly over buildings. There needs to be a change of you don't want to have stark contrast, but there needs to be some sort of contrast. Unless, again, you're trying to make a specific statement. If you're trying to really have something show, like let's say you're doing this silhouette. Obviously, the light behind the subject is going to be much brighter, and the front is going to be dark. So that's going to be a stark contrast.
Sure.
Which would be acceptable. Again, you don't want it to be blown out where it's just so bright that it's just there's no detail. You want to make sure you use the appropriate light level and the light color that you just see the outline of what you're looking at. That's so much of what we do is tied in with photography. If you study photography, you'll see that a lot of the design and a lot of the aspects of photography is very, very similar with lighting design. They go hand in hand, and that's why it's so important to really master photography or have somebody who is very good at photography photograph your work. Because it's going to give you the true representation of what's there. And if you're photoshopping out and just fooling yourself and fooling your clients, in other words, if you're doing projects that don't authentically look the way that they really look, then you're only fooling yourself, not anybody else. Because when the job is done, people can say, wait a minute, that doesn't look like the photos you showed me. This is way brighter. This is way, you know, what you put here
Seeing all
is
these hot spots. Yeah.
hot spots. You know, you have again blown out details. This just doesn't look like the photos you show me. So, you know, it may look good in photography, but in the actual work, you're not fooling anybody but yourself. It's going to come back and bite you.
Yeah.
So important to make sure the photos you have are representative of what's actually there, because it's it's just not ethically, it's not right, because you're selling based on something that's actually not, in reality. And it's just, it's not good for, you and not good for the client. It's not going to
Sure.
end up in a good result. But dark holes, let's talk about that. When you're panning across the scene, a lot of times your eyes will go to, sometimes they'll go for an area that's too bright, but you can also have your eye go towards an area that just looks not right. You'll say, I don't want to enter that space. That area there is really, really dark. There's no, should have a little bit of light there, not enough to, make out exactly what it is, but there should be a little bit something there. Not enough to draw my attention. In other words, the dark spot itself is drawing the attention. And that's how
Yeah.
you know you have a problem.
Right.
If your eye is going towards that, it's being drawn away from more important aspects of the subject and, of the scene, then you know you have something that you need to work with.
Yeah.
And again, it just takes a lot of fixtures. And there are some people, prospects that are not going to pay for it. So you know what? Unfortunately, it's not going to work. But you don't ever want to get into a situation where you have to sacrifice your design, or even sacrifice your fixture quantities, or sacrifice the quality of your fixtures because you're trying to meet a budget. Um, there are some people in this industry believe, oh, we just downgrade all of that and we'll just sell the job. For me, it's my way or the highway. Let's put it that way. Either we do things the right way, the way I'm going to do them, or we don't do them at all. And
Yeah.
you have to put your foot down somewhere. Otherwise, you end up like everybody else in this industry. Most people who are doing this are giving the people what they're asked for, but it's not what they want. They want it at a certain price. But you know what? Maybe I want to buy a Lamborghini for $50,000 brand new, but it's never going to happen. So you have to be real about it. And there's no
Yeah.
Lamborghini dealer going to sell you a $50,000 Lamborghini off the showroom floor. It's just never
Yeah.
going to happen. And it's the same thing with the lighting system. If people are not willing to pay what it costs for you to do the job right, then you're better off not doing that job, because every job should be a job that's a potential to sell more work from. So you
Yeah.
just need to be, very selective about clients who want to, cut down just for the sake of budget, because you're
Yeah.
going to get to a point where it's just not going to be good for you or the client. They're not going to be happy. You're not
Right.
going to get any work from it, and then it's going to degrade your brand and your reputation, because your truck is out there. People have seen the type of work that you've done, and it turns out to be something that's just a negative, not a positive, for sure.
Well, maybe what ties into this, and I don't know, this might be a little controversial, this topic, but we when you talk about brand and image and your reputation, and a lot of guys today seem to be um so focused on making money, and which is great, but
Right.
at what cost? So for example, when we're looking at like the holiday lighting, the permanent holiday lighting, mixing that in as part, like overtaking your landscape lighting abilities, how do you see that side of it when it comes to, if you're trying to represent yourself as a professional landscape lighting designer, provider, what's your take on that whole thing when you start mixing in these other elements,
Well, you
maybe to
have to
get the grade?
decide, from the onset, if you're going to be a specialist and if you're going to create a brand where, and to me, they say there's riches and niches, and that's been the truth, with my experience. We specialize in one thing and one thing only, and doing a certain thing a certain way, and it's really paid off. You have to decide early on if you want to have the type of business where you're doing one thing, and which is landscape lighting, and if you want to be everything to everybody, it's going to degrade your brand. There's just no two ways about that. If you want to do a specific type of project, and for me, it's mostly about nothing inspires me when I see it. Just my personal opinion. I was never into holiday lighting. I never enjoyed doing that because to me, not that I don't like what it looks like. It's a temporary lighting stuff. I just to me it doesn't make sense to go through all that effort to put up all these lights for such a small amount of time and then take them all down again. It's just never been my cup of tea. And again, they're only meant for temporary setups. You know, you only want to have them during holiday time. It's not something. It's not special anymore when it's up all year. And now, when you're talking about outlining architectural lines on a residential property, to me, I think it looks totally um, just odd. Just doesn't look right. You know, they started doing them on commercial buildings, you know, which is fine. They want to draw attention to a car dealership, a jewelry store, a restaurant, you know, whatever it may be. You know, it gives them visibility and it gives them a way for people to remember them
Yeah.
and draw eyes and attention. Then that's fine. That's one thing. But a house, to me, with color changing, you know, roof line or eave lighting, um, that you know that's on nightly, to me it just doesn't make any sense because now it you know it just looks circus like, and it looks like it's only should be there for a short temporary amount of time, not something that's you know maybe during holiday periods. But you know stuff is being sold as you know being used nightly. I never delved too deep into it to find out what the costs are, but I'm sure the cost of installation I could see are not going to be cheap. So you know the people who are buying this are going to need to make an investment, and to me, you know, to invest in that and not invest in garden lighting or even both, um, you know, I just don't think it's again my own personal opinion.
Yeah.
It's not my
Yeah.
cup of tea. So you know you have to decide on early on what you want to do. If you want to specialize in that type of lighting, there's been a big push for holiday lighting people recently to get into the landscape lighting trade. Um, and again, you know that's fine if they want to do really good work and you know they want to be good for the industry. I have no issue with that. It's obviously related. I mean, look, the holiday lighting is very limited. That's the time of year you can install it. What do you do for the rest of the year? You have to have something else to do.
Yeah.
So, you know, being a landscape lighting design installer during the rest of the year, you know, I'm not whatever. That's fine. But now they're looking to get other trades involved. Anybody, roofers, anybody who has a ladder on their truck, they want to, you know, they want to get you to install lighting. And
Yeah.
to me, I think you just have to be passionate about what you do. If you don't have a passion, if you don't enjoy, that's why I work every day out there with in the field because I love what I do. You know,
Yeah.
it's not to me, as I mentioned in the first part of the series, it's you know, it's all about to me it's working in my business and working on my business as well. There's nothing
Yeah.
shameful about working in your business. Most business people will tell you, "Oh, you got to get yourself out of the field. You got to get out of the truck." Well, for me, you know, it's just not something that I'm interested in doing. I love to do what I do, and it's worked out well for me. And if you want to be a, you know, somebody who's just a business person and who sells the job, then like I said, that's not my cup of tea. It's not the way that I do things. But you make that decision as what's best for you know you as a tradesperson, and obviously if it works out well for you, I mean I could have exploded this business years ago. I am not interested in scaling. That's another word that a lot of people keep using in this
Yeah.
industry. Oh, you got to scale. You got to scale. Well, guess what? You know that my personal situation. I mean, I'm very content. I'm not.
Yeah.
You know, I've done very well
Right.
by being you know in the field. There's no reason for me to scale any more than you know than what I've you know you bring more work in and it starts to get out of your hands when other people
Yeah.
are doing the installs. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with landscape lighting, a lot of
Yeah. It's
problems
harder to control. More people you bring on board. I
you
mean,
can
there's
destroy your
more
brand in a New York minute,
opportunity
let
for
me tell you.
problems. Yeah.
If you don't have hands on, and I'll be honest with you, back in the day when I worked alone, it's been 18 years I've had employees. Okay.
Yeah.
So for the first 17 years of my career, I worked alone. All right. And there were times where I was under such pressure. I had people waiting 7 months for an install and 7 months.
Yeah.
And I would literally like, I would get on a job and I would have to like hustle and work, you know, extremely hard and extremely fast to get jobs, done so I can stay on schedule and, you know, and I never did not meet a commitment, but
Yeah.
it put a lot of pressure on me. That's a whole, that's a subject for a whole nother talk about.
Yeah.
I should have I was such a control freak that I did all this by myself until like 18 years ago. Okay. So you're talking about a
Yeah.
guy who's, totally hands on, who's just, and I love it.
Yeah.
But thinking back, I really should have gotten help a lot sooner. And
Yeah.
I still have the original guys that I started with. That's
Yeah.
also testament to the way I treat them and pay them, and and the way they respond to me and do the job in a great way for me. But yeah, it's being in business is business is really important. You need to make good money to build the business. You can't sustain the business without making good money. But when I hear the word scaling, I have to be like, everybody wants to scale. Everybody wants to scale. Everybody scale. That's the word for growing your business these days.
Yeah.
You know what? That's the most important thing. I'm content to do the same amount of money I do year to year. I live a very, very nice lifestyle.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go into my personal business, but my
Yeah.
situation.
Oh,
I'm
sure.
very comfortable. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I've done very well, with this business. It's far exceeded my expectations. It's far given me more than I've ever thought that I ever could achieve with it. So when I have to look and see people pushing, oh, you got to scale, you got to get bigger, you got to grow, you got to franchise, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to sell your product to other people. That's the other thing about my product. I've been approached by so many people over the years. We'd like to use your product. I have my name on the product. If things are not being done the way I want to be done, then I don't want my name on it out there. That's why
Yeah.
I've been resistant to sell product to others in the industry, because I don't have any control over it. My name is on the stuff, you
Yeah.
know. And if it's going to be a slam bang installation, I don't care if it's 3,000 miles away. My name is on it. I got a lot of pride in what I do. I've built a brand over 35 years, and I don't want it to be damaged, especially with
Yeah.
online now. If
Yeah.
somebody else is installing my equipment and my name is on it and it's not right, I have no control over it, and I just don't want that. So
Yeah.
it's just real important to me to maintain, maintain business wise, to maintain what my reputation has become over the years.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. You talk about, all these people that are coming into the business today, a lot of different trades and such. Um, One of the problems that I've seen, and we've talked about this, is how, by bringing in this influx of all these people that are pretty much newbies now, or a lot of newer people, it's lowering the bar in essence, because they're not educated or experienced in
Right.
what we do. So therefore, all the new education that's out there, this big push for technology, the big push for, maximizing sales, all these things that are happening, that's the mentality of where our industry is going now. So in my opinion, I think it's lowering the bar towards standardization, towards making this more professional, because again, that's the base that we're dealt with now. There's very few people that have, experience at, your level, our levels of, being around for quite a long
Right.
time,
Right.
that's able to push that or instill that or make that the standard. I'm seeing it's becoming a harder battle.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, unfortunately, historically in our industry, as I said before, there has been more product than installers.
Yeah.
And, there's a difference between an installer and somebody who's a designer and is doing, um, putting 100% of their effort and making sure that, they're building a business and they're not just slamming lights in, and then they're collecting a check and then never running back to it again. The standards again are varied. There's really no set standard. We've struggled in this industry over the years about whether we want to have inspections and permits being pulled. Low voltage lighting is inherently safe. It's true. But you're dealing still with transformers that are connected to 120 volt power sources. Even with low voltage lighting, if it's not done right, and there's dangerous situations that can result from it.
Yeah.
I'm not going as far as pushing for permits and inspections. Um, I would like to see special licensing, but then again, this industry is so fractured. Who is going to be the governing board as to
There you
who's going
go.
to decide,
Yep.
what and what is going to require to be licensed, and
Yeah.
so forth. And we have an industry right now where there's one trade association which has one event through the year, and you basically don't hear from them ever, throughout the whole year, except for the one event that they have. So, and again, you have people, very small portion of the people who are using lighting, buying it and installing it, who are even part of that association.
Yeah.
A very, very small portion, to date, of installers. There's probably, my guess is going to be, there's probably more product sellers, um, students who are members than there are actually. Again, I'm not going to use the word system. I'm going to say, uh, just we'll use the word installers. Uh, people who are just doing installations. So that's an issue, in and of itself too. You know,
Yeah.
um, again, I don't really keep, close contact to what's going on with that too much. I'm pretty much do my own thing. And, I've never really wanted to have too much influence from others in the industry. Because, you know, again, as far as I'm concerned, until, things change, until the standards are raised, and until we start to eradicate all of the poor installs that are going on out there, that which is really hurting the
Yeah.
overall industry, uh,
Yeah.
and just giving it a bad reputation, and also making it more difficult for everyone to sell jobs for a profit, for
Sure.
a good profit. And there should be a good profit
Yeah.
made. You're bringing a lot of joy to people's lives. You're, adding to the security feeling of, and the pride they have in their property after dark.
Yeah.
We're really, really important. I mean, I really think that landscape lighting is right up there with any other home amenity you can imagine, you
Yeah.
can enhance someone's life with.
Yeah. I think, you know, one day I'm hoping that the rest of the industry realizes that, until, I mean, they're wondering why we can't charge more for our systems, make more money, blah
Right,
blah blah. I mean, there's a big push, as you know. I mean, where guys are doubling, tripling their rates and whatever. It's like an immediate gain, a short-term game, I feel, because eventually that will catch up to everybody, where the consumer is going to realize, hey, look, this is a game, this is a sales thing, just to double, you make extra money. There, where's the value in
right.
what you're really getting?
Well, the
And
thing is this, there's,
yeah.
I talk about the installation of conduit, and, installing the systems in a certain way that it just makes sense, and,
Yeah.
getting proper power to the fixtures, and, not even to bring the design aspect into it, but just doing a proper install, doing something that is serviceable. And, you got these guys out here talking about wire traces, and I have to laugh. Never ever once in my whole career in 35 years did I ever need a wire tracer,
Yeah.
because you know what? There's a broken wire in the field. It's very easy to know that where the not exactly where the cut is, but where it's located. And
Yeah.
what you're going to do is you're going to put a new wire in anyway. You don't want to make a repair and have it sticking somewhere underneath the bush where it may go bad again. So your instant thought, when you say that you're looking for a wire trace, the instant thought is that you're going to go and just repair that thing. You're not going to replace the whole line anyway. And when it's inside conduit, you have a much, much, much less chance of having any damage. I can't remember the last time we've had a callback for damage to wiring, because, it just doesn't happen. It's just people see conduit, great conduit. They don't know if it's 120 volts in there. They respect it, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's very, very rare that we have an issue. So, you have people that are just installing direct bury. Some are not even burying it. Some are just, throwing mulch on the top. And they think that that's an acceptable install. They're using connections. that are subpar, that are wire nuts or tape connections or, crimp connections that
Here's
have no sort of
barbs. Yeah.
waterproofing on them
Yeah.
whatsoever.
Yeah.
Entry points for moisture to get into the cable, transformers that are not, proper, not even made for landscape lighting, don't have the proper fusing, proper breakers on them. They're not even rated for landscape lighting, the cheapest stuff that they can get. These are the type of things that have been going on since day one. I mean, I come across them all the time. We replace them and
Yeah.
throw them right in the trash. I mean,
Yeah.
this almost happens on every job. I've got thousands and thousands and thousands of photographs of poor installs, poor, choice of materials, improper choice of materials, improper connections, connections right in the middle of the yard in several places where they've split off and nobody knows where they are. I mean, just crazy things, that should never be done. That should just be standard in the industry. But again, how do you police that? I mean, how do you stop people from cutting corners? Unless, again, you go back to the fact that if there's permits and, if there's inspections, which again, I'm not sure I'm at that point where I want that because it's going to add more cost to a project and it's going to also slow things down, make things more difficult. And now you got, cities getting involved with what we're doing.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
that's a double-edged sword. I mean, it could be good in one aspect, but may not be so good in another. But I'll tell you what, it would eliminate a lot of the unqualified installers and installations that are going on out there. And the people who sell product have fought tooth and nail against any kind of regulation in this industry. And, they've created what we have now, because they've also sold the product to them, with there's been no vetting of, you got a credit card? Okay, no problem. What do you do for, no question, what do you do? Well, I do kitchens, and baths. Oh, you want to install outdoor lighting for a client? No problem. Here you go. Here's the product. Gonna need some wire with that too, and here's some connections.
Yeah.
So, you got a pickup truck and you have a Phillips screwdriver and a hammer. No problem. You got a car you work out of. As long as you got a vehicle, you can install some lighting.
Yeah.
It's just I'm not even exaggerating. Unfortunately, but that's what's out there. So, again, you have to compete against that. People, again, more than half the people out there who are installing are not professional. They're not specialized. They don't have the techniques. They don't have the design capability. They don't have the installation capability. And unfortunately, it's just hurt us all. So,
nice.
And I don't know when that's ever going to. We've been looking for that. I've been looking.
Yeah, I don't know
for
if it's
35
going to
years.
change. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't have the answer
like
to that.
we're too far gone at this point.
Well, all I see is more and more product sellers coming out there, pushing product, and now, again, they've also tried to get the people who do landscape lighting to install audio systems. I mean, it's like everybody's stepping over everybody else's, expertise. Audio systems have been historically left for, people who do security systems, people who do audio inside the home.
Yeah.
And now they're also adding landscape lighting to their repertoire. And now some of the magazines, I get the magazine that is for the pros. I think I've made a reference a couple of times in emails to you. Look what's going on in this industry. They're pushing hard for security guys who are doing security systems, doing, ring cameras, whatever. They're doing low voltage inside the house, who's, stereo systems. They're pushing hard for them to do landscape lighting as well.
Yeah.
So, and again, that's totally different. It's, it's not the same. Lighting just because they install security systems, what qualifies them to do a lighting design?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Takes a lot of effort and a lot of study,
knowledge, and because again, you're dealing with plants, you're dealing with light, the design side of it, composition. I mean,
right.
They don't teach that in these,
Well, no, I mean, again, but now you got an outlet to get the product wholesale or whatever.
Yeah.
Hey, and they make it so that, hey, if you don't offer this to your customer, you're a sucker. That's pretty much what they're telling you.
Yeah.
And that's how they approached the landscaper years ago too. They said the same thing. I mean, I can remember receiving texts at 4 o'clock in the morning stating, $5,500 a day you should be making putting landscape lighting in. If you're not, and you're a landscaper, then you're a sucker. You're an idiot. You'd be making all sorts of side money and blah blah blah. You know.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean,
Interesting.
look, it's what it is.
Yeah.
But we have to deal with it. I mean, we have to. I don't think it's ever going to change. It's just, thank goodness that a handful of us have become successful doing this in spite of the industry. Um, not because of any really assistance we've gotten from them. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very
Any
few out there looking
last?
to get
Oh, I'm
specialists.
sorry.
Very few out there who are pushing for specialized trade.
Right.
And that's always
Right.
been my thing, as you know. I've been very famous about saying this industry is really never going to become completely um, legitimate until we have more installers who are specialized in the field of design, in the expertise of design and installation, doing the lion's share of the installs. And we're nowhere near that at this point.
No.
Nowhere near that at this point.
Yeah.
We have a long way to go. But no one wants to address it,
Yeah.
Not any of the associations, not any of the groups. They don't care. They just
Yeah.
think they're way beyond it. But
Yeah.
I don't think that they are.
Yeah.
I really don't.
No, you're right. I agree. Any other problems or big things that might be on your mind that you could share? You think it's a big problem for today's
I just think and I've always said this to you from day one too. And and again, historically, I've always blamed the industry as a whole for it, about educating the consumer.
Yeah.
And it's always been left up to the individual designers like ourselves to do that, which we have a very limited reach. I mean, we're all
Yeah.
regional. There's no one, I guess it's probably a good thing, but there's really no one entity. Like in the landscape business, there's some huge companies that are all over. Some of them are multinational, or at the very least, they're in multiple states operating, and they're a real big presence. We really don't have any landscape lighting specialists. Where there's some franchises, but no real dominating um, company that you can go to and say, they are leading the way, and they're doing things the right way, and they're they're a huge company, and they're out there teaching the prospect. It's just not happening. And again, we all do our best to promote ourselves, but there's a number of messages that are being told out there. My message is do it the right way, use conduit, so on and so forth, build a system with all impervious to the elements materials, being stainless steel, copper, brass. Use the solid products, cast brass, or real heavy duty wall products that are going to last. Brass stakes, brass connections with weatherproof sleeves. Doing a hub system, and running the wiring in a specific way that makes it easy for the install and for the upkeep, and also for the expansion. And then you have the other message where it's just basically, no message, where it's just, have somebody come and install a system for you, or, go grab a box for that matter at Home Depot and go at it yourself. There's really nothing out there that educates the consumer in regards to what a system should cost, and what it entails, and what the different range of costs are. So that just becomes I think an industry-wide challenge.
Oh yeah.
I would like to see some unified method of reaching the public as a whole, to just let them know what we do. But again, there's factions of this industry don't want that, because they want to be open to selling the product to anybody, and that includes do-it-yourselfers.
Yeah.
Which again, in my estimation, is a very small market. But just the same, a lot of these so-called professional manufacturers will sell the product to anybody, and that includes do-it-yourselfers. Don't need to have any qualifications to do the install. There's just none of that.
Yeah.
So I would like to see some sort of unification where we had some sort of a word to get to get the word out there. But it
Yeah.
just seems to be the powers that be in this industry will never allow it to happen because it's going to cut down on the sale of their product to
Sure.
anyone. Put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I'm waiting until 2030. It's another 5 years out, but back in 2019, I did a white paper, right? I don't know if you remember,
I remember.
for the IES,
Yeah.
and I wrote about all this, and it was selected as a piece that they published. And I had said, that this is what I see happening over the next 10 years. That was the goal of the paper back then.
Right.
And we talked about there was no authority, there's some fragmentation in the market,
Right.
all these things that we're still seeing. And here we are halfway now through since I
Yeah.
wrote this paper, and it's still the same thing.
Yeah. There's been
And
no
it
change.
will continue, I'm afraid. So 2030, if I'm still alive, I guess I'll probably make a big post about that and say, look at even this level of organization, they have 10,000 plus members, blah, blah, blah. They're supposedly the leaders in the industry,
Well,
and
they've
they've
dabbled a
done
little bit in what we
nothing
do.
about it.
You know, most
Yeah,
of their stuff has been on, on high-end architectural projects and not really garden lighting, as we know it. It's
yeah,
sort of, yeah, they're pretty much out of touch with really what we do. They're really not, you know, I would say probably the go-to in regards to what we do. Um, but yeah, I don't think that it's really going to change too much. I really don't.
no,
It hasn't
yeah,
changed in the 35 years that I've been doing this.
absolutely. Yeah,
It's unfortunate, but it really is that's the way it's been. And
right,
looking into the future, doesn't look like anything is going to improve. The only
yeah,
thing that may change is that we're going to be getting more resellers of product, and
yeah,
I see a lot of that now. I see
right,
people who have product, all right, that's like generic stuff from coming from overseas that's been knocked off, or manufactured by the same source over in Asia, and they sell it under their own brand name as if it's their own brand name, or they maybe
yeah,
put a proprietary LED in it, and but nobody recognizes it. I'm like, really? I've seen that same product being sold and represented by 30 different odd names. I mean, or most people don't
yeah,
even put their name. It's like a generic.
yeah,
And it's like this is not even recognized or even talked about, and it's accepted. I'm like,
yeah,
what's going on? What happens when the thing fails? I mean, it's got nobody's name on it. No one. Who do
yeah,
you go to? You know,
right,
a lot of these original installers are not around, nor do they care to even service their systems. So if you as a homeowner have a situation where you have a product that's failed, there's no name on it. Where do you go to? Sometimes I see these UL or ETL labels on just they're fake because there's no name on anything. There's no
yeah,
name on the product. So, and there's like, where do you trace it to? Even the ETL numbers, you trace those, and it's like there's no way to find out who the manufacturer is because it's just a fake. There's nobody out there who's even
yeah,
checking on any of that.
no,
So it's that was a big push several years ago. Was years ago it used to be, well, when garden lighting is safe, we don't need we don't need any type of listings or anything like that. And then all of a sudden that changed maybe 10 or 15 years ago, where everybody went ahead and got all their products listed. I went ahead and got my products listed. Everybody went ahead and made the products listed because they were trying to use that against you as a marketing tool. Say, oh, our products are ETL, our products are UL. Well, guess what? I know exactly what goes on during the process of testing that stuff. And
yeah,
literally, your product, if it doesn't pass, it's got to be the simplest thing. It's outdoors, okay? It's very simple. It's a piece of brass and a wire and a socket or a module, and it's enclosed inside of a fixture. All right, so the chance of that causing a fire anywhere, the fixture itself, um, is so minimal that
yeah,
our transformers are another story. But fixtures, to go ahead and have all those things tested, it's just kind of ridiculous. I mean, if you've got a lamp in your house, yeah, that's another thing. There's combustible materials that are there, and
yeah,
those lamps get much hotter. And
sure,
years ago they had trouble with those lamps turning over and causing fires, breaking, and hitting the rugs or whatever, but again, even those are even very, very rare chance of having any issues. But in a garden lighting fixture, I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And now you don't hear anything anymore because now most have got their products listed, and again, you're paying for what, a
Yeah.
label on the inside of the fixture, which nobody even looks at, nobody even refers to.
Yeah.
So doesn't
Yeah.
mean anything, doesn't change anything. It's just another sticker to put inside, and used to be something
Another
to
cost.
brag
Yeah.
about. Yeah, another cost to have to incur, and
Yeah.
and obviously an end cost to the consumer.
Sure.
And again, transformers are a totally different story. Those are 120-volt devices, but garden lighting fixture, is
Yeah.
really very low threat of having any kind of issues. There's more of an issue at the connection point. That's where you're
Yep.
going to have a potential for fire because they're loose or because they're not made properly. Um, you know, Loose connections with low voltage, as you know, creates a lot of heat, and that's where you
Yeah.
get potential issues. I have seen wire cable that is burned in the field because the
Yeah.
connections have been subpar. And if you've got leaves or any kind of combustible material that's up against that, then of course you have the possibility of creating
Yeah.
a fire.
Yeah.
But again, any instances of that are very, very low.
Yeah.
You don't really hear too much of that anymore. Any of these manufacturers use that as a competitive against using it against their competitors. Say, oh, we're E2L, UL, and they're not, and type of
Yeah.
thing. So
Sure. Sure.
I guess what I'm
Well,
saying is there's been very little very little cooperation amongst a lot of competition and very little cooperation. Let's put it that way. Very,
yeah.
very competitive amongst. Let's face it, we all have egos. Everybody, in this industry who is involved, and everybody has a level of ego. Everybody thinks
Yeah.
they got the best out there, and I think that just comes with the territory. But
Yeah.
a lot of us are very competitive amongst each other. Um, there are a lot of friendships that form within the industry, but pretty much if things are not being done your way, then you take a real competitive stance against that other person in the industry. And there's a lot of it's always been that way. A lot of
Yeah.
animosity
Yeah.
amongst amongst players in this industry.
Sure.
You
Sure.
know,
Yep.
which
Well,
I don't think is very productive. But
no, yeah, it
it
does.
is what
It
it is.
hurts in the long run. It causes friction, and then there's,
Yeah.
like you say, it just it doesn't help move things forward. Let's just say,
No, there's a lot of bad mouthing of people and
yeah.
whatever, jealousy involved, and who knows. I mean,
Yeah.
that's that's a whole nother story. But
Sure.
that's involved. That because you come across that once in a while.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Well, let's go ahead and end it here. Thank you for your time and on these insights. This is awesome. I think as a closing thought, um, after considering what we just talked about and where is there hope for the future, all these different things that are taking place, I think one of the things that I think we can offer as hope is that we do save these through LA for future like archiving. So
Right.
our hope is that the next generation maybe will take some of these thoughts, these insights, and take them forward. Hopefully they can solve some of these problems that we haven't been able to solve.
Well, even the fact that we have this technology is, can you imagine back in the day when
Oh yeah.
Nightingale and if we were able to have tapes of what their thoughts were and how valuable they would be in today's world? Because
Oh,
as
I know.
we wrote the book together, the Nightingale garden lighting book. We republished it and enhanced it.
Yeah.
That book, to this day is so, is just resonates, and it's just, it's
Yeah.
so valuable and it's so pertinent. And I call it the Bible and the most important book ever published. And it was published in what, 62, was it?
That one was gosh, now
Early
I'm blanking.
60s?
No, I think it
Every,
was 62.
okay.
No,
62.
58. I'm sorry, 58.
Okay.
The other one was,
58.
yeah,
Okay.
58, 62, and 64 were the three books.
And I've never seen another book that's come down the pike that's even been close to that. I mean,
Hmm.
when you look at it, it covers everything from photography, which at the time was black and white,
Yeah.
who had to, how to deal with clients, and also, setting lights up for party purposes, um, and doing, growing a business with garden lighting. I mean,
Yeah.
like, again, to me, it's the Bible of our industry, and it's great, but it's also sad in a way because nothing else is nothing else has come down the pike in my estimation that has been as good as, and comprehensive as that. And
Yeah.
that's, what is that, 70, what is that, 60, what is that, 65 years, 67 years ago,
Yeah.
58,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So that's quite a statement. We haven't really grown too much as an industry. A lot has changed. So for us to have this technology and to be able to save it for, perpetuity, I think is really important.
Yeah, like I say, I just hope it's helpful, and I hope that others may, even if it's a small minority, pick it up and
Right.
continue,
Well,
because that's the
it's
only
going to go
way that
two
we can
ways. There's
survive.
going to be
Yeah.
people that are going to like it, and they're going to get value from it. And then there's people that are, obviously, they don't agree with our message or my message or your message.
Yeah.
They're going to ignore it, or they're going to badmouth it, or whatever. So it is what it is. And, we just do the best we can, and move forward. That's all. I just hope what I've said has been helpful to others. I know
Yeah.
that I would have liked to have had this type of, mentoring back when I basically did this all on my own. I really had nobody to turn to. I had to learn
Yeah.
on my own through trial and error. I mean, it really was. There was really no source. Nightscaping was very helpful, but they're a manufacturer. I mean, to be honest with you, Bill Loughlin wasn't really the best lighting designer around. And at
Hmm.
that time, I didn't even know anything about Nightingale. So you're pretty much out there on your own.
Yeah.
It was a small group of us that used the product, that would communicate amongst ourselves, which was very helpful. But a lot of guys would not even share information. That was one thing I could never understand. I mean, anybody who's ever come to me and asked me, I answer everybody. I don't ever blow anybody off. I mean, I get private messages from a lot of people in this industry who tell me, "Oh, I contacted so and so who's supposedly doing this and doing that," and they won't even answer my question. They won't even respond to my private message. So I've never been like that. I have no reason to. I tell out front what I do, and if it can be helpful to somebody else, I just hope that they do things in a quality way and they follow, standard. Again, go back to standard. There really is no standard, but I would wish they would follow good practices, um, and just put
Yeah.
good lighting out there because it helps us all. Anything that's done, really not well is just really not good for any of us.
Yeah.
Definitely is not going to help the industry. Hasn't helped grow the industry. That's for sure. And that's one of our issues too, is that we have a problem with that. With
Yeah.
like we discussed, a lot of lighting out there that's just not inspirational. Doesn't help to promote any type of future that we may all have.
Sure.
For sure.
Well, again, thank you for your wealth of insights and knowledge. There's not many people that have attained your level, so I appreciate it.
Well,
Thank you for your time.
I thank you. I constantly being asked when I'm going to retire, and I'm 60 years old right now, and I don't have
Yeah.
any intentions of retiring, God willing, and hope that I stay healthy. I'll be doing this until they throw the dirt on me. So
There you go.
we'll see. Time will tell.
Yep.
Thanks
All right,
again.
Mike. Have a great rest of your Sunday,
You
and
too.
we'll be in touch. We'll do this again.
Thank you. I
Appreciate it.
appreciate it.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Alrighty.